Welcome to Public Health on Call, a new podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Our focus is the novel coronavirus. I'm Josh Sharfstein, a faculty member at Johns Hopkins and also a former secretary of Maryland's Health Department. Our goal with this podcast is to bring evidence and experts to help you understand today's news about the novel coronavirus and what it means for tomorrow. If you have questions, you can email them to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. It's Friday, so today we answer listener questions. Today's topic is mental health during the time of COVID-19. Stephanie Desmond talks to Laura Murray, a clinical psychologist at Johns Hopkins. They discuss how to handle feelings about people who refuse to follow social distancing rules and how to prevent COVID stigma. Let's listen.
Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, Stephanie.
So we're going to do some more mental health questions and answers. I know people still have lots on their mind regarding mental health during this very long period of shutdowns, some eased openings. Things are changing every day, really.
Absolutely.
And I'd like to know I've been looking at these pictures of people gathering, huge parties, people on the beach. And it's starting to make me think about this question, which is sort of, when you see people behave like this, how do you deal with sort of what you can control and what you can't when it comes to other people's behavior? Because I know that's something that's preoccupying me a little bit. It's like you see these pictures and you think they're supposed to stay inside, they're supposed to have masks, they're supposed to stay away from each other. So tell me, how we should really be coping with that.
Such a good question, and definitely something I think we're all struggling with. I think one of the common recommendations we give is it's smart to always sort of step back and say, can I control this? And what can I not? And I think you're already taking that first step, right? Just recognition that we can't control other people's behaviors. And that in and of itself can really help us. I think related to COVID, another really good check-in is to identify your fears. Just name them, write them down, or even just think about them. What about that picture, that scene, what is that triggering in you? Because I think that can really help you frame it. And then the next step really is to move into some of that reframing. So instead of ruminating or getting real frustrated or saying like these people or they need to stop, is to reframe it within your own mind of, this bothers me because I'm afraid of X. I know I can't control it. So the best thing I can do is. Something more like that will naturally calm our body down, refocus us to what we can control, meaning ourselves. And usually reframes like that actually help us respect or maybe see a different perspective or understand things like that. The last thing I'll just add, Stephanie, and something that I've really been working on myself is understanding how your decisions or reactions will actually affect you. So if we get angry or agitated or really focused on what's happening when we see pictures of beaches or bars or crowded areas, noticing that frustration is really hurting us.
So me behaving this way or thinking this way doesn't help change the situation, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes. Now, all of that, of course, is easier said than done.
Of course.
And something that we have to constantly work on as human beings. One of the best things that we know is that human behavior changes when you write things down. Writing things down is a very powerful tool. It also is really helpful to engage someone close to you. So just being able to state, oh, I was so frustrated today because of this, and really having them help you acknowledge.
That's very good advice. So we have another question here. It's sort of about deciding what's right for you and your family, right? So it really dovetails to the first question, which is what actions you're going to take. And this question asks about not shaming others for their decisions. So how do we decide what's right for us as individuals? And then I guess, how do we work on judging the other people or not judging other people?
Right. Right. Decision making and problem solving are skills that don't necessarily just come with being born as human beings. They're skills that need to be learned and honed over time. And I think COVID is a good example and a good opportunity for us to recognize that and then to use it as an opportunity to maybe learn some more advanced skills. I think with COVID, there's a couple things that to keep in mind when you're deciding what's right for you and your family. One of them is uncertainty. We know that many facts are unknown about COVID. We don't always know the answers. Things are changing in real time. Even today, as we talk, Stephanie, this is a different day than it was last time we talked, right? Different stage of sort of reopening and things. So I think that's really important to talk about with you and your family is what do we know and what do we not know? The second thing to really consider is complexity. What are the interrelated factors you're considering? Your family situation might be different than mine, right? Someone may be high risk, or we might be trying to go see a grandparent. So I think that really plays into it. So uncertainty, complexity, and then looking at high risk consequences. So what are the impacts of your decisions? How high risk are they? And then the fourth one I would say is alternatives, each with its sort of various set of uncertainties and consequences. And then finally, interpersonal issues. Sort of how would different people react to what you're doing? And that's really just considering the greater society. So when we look at problem solving, we usually have, again, people sort of write these down because we know that that's really helpful for all of us. So, what is your problem? What's your goal? What are possible solutions? And then really breaking those solutions down into smaller steps, maybe testing it out. And then one thing I've realized is you have to realize that things aren't stagnant. So the decision my family and I might make today might be different tomorrow, just because things ebb and flow, or we tried something and it just didn't feel right. So I think there's a real problem solving process here that might help people juggle all of these complexities with COVID.
Hmm. Hmm. That's a really interesting point. Another question we have here is sort of about stigma.
Mhm.
I've been reading about this sort of stigma of people getting COVID. So I've read some that people are sort of likening it to someone who's got a sexually transmitted infection. And so instead of people saying, this is great, I've recovered from COVID, they are being shamed for having had it. And people are afraid they don't know how to deal with them. And so I'm curious about the stigma question.
Yeah. It's so great to raise this because I do think that we're seeing more and more of that. And I think one of the things that we know about stigma is it arises when the virus and the person with the virus are conflated, right? When we look at a question of what's to blame, from what's to blame to who's to blame. And in mental health, we've done a lot of research on stigma, obviously, because many people with mental illnesses are highly stigmatized. So, first and foremost is to call it out, which Stephanie, you're doing, which is great because I think that's really what we know about the most important first step is just to say, this is happening and it's not right. We don't need to stigmatize people. The second big thing to talk about is facts, because we know that stigma is reduced when we know the facts and when myths are diminished. So, the more we can learn about transmission, prognosis, and treatment, and really making sure that people are focused on the facts rather than some of the other stuff that's out there, which, of course, there's a lot of these days. And then the third thing, which your field has been, I think, just amazing at, is seeing stories online about the illness, about COVID, because it humanizes the experience. It decreases the stigma to really watch or read about someone who has this. It then turns to the question of sort of the virus rather than, you know, someone being blamed for it.
Mhm. And I guess the ambiguity is something that could be potentially leading to this stigmatizing behavior because we don't know everything about this illness. And we don't know for sure that once you're recovered, are you really cured? Are you potentially infectious? I mean, there are still questions that we don't have answers to. Does that lead to more of this kind of behavior?
Absolutely. I think it circles back again, naming fears is so helpful. For example, if someone is diagnosed with it, whether they don't have it anymore, whether they still have it, just to be able to say, I'm trying to stay away from this person because I'm nervous about this. I'm fearful. We don't know if it's going to come back, or, how long it transmits. And just really being honest about that can also get rid of a lot of stigma, because it's about the unknown about the virus then. It's not about the person. And I think the more direct we can be of, I'm nervous to be around you, not because of you, but because we don't know how this virus interacts. And here are my particular circumstances. I also think empathy is going to run the race here. Like, we just need to understand that there's a lot of different emotions going on here, a lot of different circumstances that have to do with family, a lot of different considerations people are making, and just really showing empathy for the process we're all in, for those that have it, for those that are worried about getting it, for those that have been through it, and just going back to sort of that human element of empathy.
Mm-hmm. Last thing I'm thinking of myself is sort of, the longer this goes on, the more it feels like there's no end in sight.
Mm.
And so I feel like there's more anxiety around, are we really going to still be in here in 6 months, kind of thing. And I'm curious what advice you might have for people like me.
Yeah. You're certainly not alone. Is this ever going to end? Am I ever going to get in on an airplane again?
Right.
Yeah. Boy, and we're hearing a lot of that. Am I ever going to see my family again? Even what are some holidays going to look like coming up? I think that's that uncertainty that is all around us right now. And I think one of the best things to do is go back to reframing. Is it something you can control? Right? Does it help you to think about these things and sort of worry about them, so to speak? One of the tips and tricks we sort of use is having people just start a journal, just put it down, put it out there. I'm worried that I'm never going to be able to see my family for the rest of 2020. And that really makes me sad. Just to put it out there and just be real about it, but try not to over focus on it. Another thing that we talk a lot about is specifically focusing on it for certain times of the day. So you're forced to think about it for a couple minutes in the morning and a couple minutes at night. And sometimes that helps people not focus on it the rest of the day. The other thing is that meditation, quiet time, things like that can actually really help you get used to uncertainty and out of the flow of planning and having to know, what's going on. And obviously some people are more built naturally to do that. I myself am not. But I think calming and working with that gratitude for things that you can do, things like that, can shift some of those nerves. Again, I just want to come back to, this is all easier said than done. And it's really a daily, sometimes even minute by minute process to deal with a lot of what we're dealing with, which is new for everyone.
Laura Murray, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Thank you for listening to Public Health on Call, a new podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. Please send questions to be covered in future podcasts to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. This podcast is produced by Josh Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Lamare Morales. Audio production by Niall Owen McCusker and Spencer Greer, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Thank you for listening.